Okay, hello everybody. Welcome to the Bootcamp Blueprint, the place where personal trainers go to grow their bootcamp and social media. My name's Jono and I'm your host, and I'm super excited because we've got a big event coming up. It's FITEX. Now, if you're not aware of what FITEX is, it's actually the biggest convention for fitness professionals in New Zealand, and it's an amazing convention. I go every single year. And just a little story about how I discovered FITEX. It was couple years ago now, and I think I listened to a podcast and it said, hey, it's the podcast host was saying how important it is to upskill and that conventions and conferences are a great way to upskill. So I was like, great, I'll check out FITEX when that's coming up and I'll book that. And I had a look at FITEX. It was in Melbourne at the time. I'm in Sydney, and I missed the early bird. Tickets were maybe $1,000. And I was like, okay, it's the cost of going. I think I can do that. Looked at accommodation. It was a couple $100 in the middle of Melbourne. I was like, oh, this is adding up. Had a look at flights. I, missed the early bird flights as well. So they were adding up. And I was like, oh, no, I want to go, but this is starting to add up. I wonder if there's anything else around the place. So I did a bit of a Google search. I had a look and found there was FITEX in New Zealand. And I had a look through, and I got the early bird rate. So it was a lot cheaper than $1,000 Australian. I looked at the accommodation and it was a lot cheaper than a couple $100 a night. So I was like, okay. Had a look at flights. It's not too bad from Sydney. I think it's about a 3-hour flight. And to be honest, I've been stuck in traffic longer than that in Sydney. So I was like, you know what? This is looking good. Checked out the presenters, and the presenter quality was amazing. So I booked it and I loved it. The quality was as good as anywhere else. I've since been to many other conventions across the world, and the quality there is just as good. The community and the culture, I believe, is friendlier than anywhere else. And also it's a lot smaller, which in my opinion is a good thing. You go to some convention, there's a lot of people, which is great, but there's also an advantage to having a small one. It's almost the equivalent to, why do we pay a bit more for personal training? Because it's a bit more personal. Same thing with this convention. But anyways, from there, I decided I'm going back every single year. And this year I've been lucky enough to be accepted as a presenter. A couple different presentations, actually. So this month on the podcast, what I'm going to do is interview the biggest names in the New Zealand fitness industry to get everyone who's going more excited about going. And anyone that's sitting on the fence, I want these next couple interviews to push you over the line so you come down. Anyways, talking about the biggest names in the New Zealand fitness industry, I believe we've got one of the biggest names on the show today, because this person is the CEO of the Exercise Association of New Zealand. Now, I'm sure he'll give us a bit of a rundown of what that is later, but to summarize, they organize FITEX, and straight off their website, they're a non-for-profit organization. Their mission is to proactively support a sustainable exercise and fitness industry in New Zealand by growing participation in structured exercise through advocacy, information, and industry standards. And this person on his own, he's very active. He's been on many boards, the Active Aotearoa, the New Zealand Register of Exercise Professionals, reps, the International Confederation of Exercise Professionals, IC reps. He's an international presenter. He's presented in conferences all over the world: Singapore, USA, Australia, New Zealand, China, Hong Kong, South Africa, all the biggest conventions: URSA, FITEX, FITEX, for the biggest companies, Anytime Fitness, Curves. So without further ado, we've got the one and only Mr. Richard Beddie. Richard, how are you?
I'm very good. And yourself?
I am amazing. Thank you very much for your time here, Richard. What I like to start all these interviews off with is a quote or mantra that you like to live by, or motivates you, or inspires you. Have you got one you could share with our listeners?
Yeah, look, I think there's kind of two, I'll say almost concepts that I really like. And the first one is being authentic. Know what you're about and do that. Everyone always wants to tell you, you should do this or you should do that. And I think, I'm not going to tell you that, but know what it is that you're about. And whether that be in a business capacity or whether it be in a personal capacity, and then be that, live it and breathe it. And the other one I would say is trust yourself. Trust yourself, back yourself, and follow. A lot of people talk about following your passion, but whatever it is that you are doing right now, and it may be that in fact your job isn't your passion, and that's okay, by the way. It's great when it is, but it's okay if it's not. But just trust yourself and back yourself when you're doing something new, or you're launching into this industry, or maybe you've been doing it a while and you're going into new ideas. Trust yourself, back yourself, and go for it.
Love it. Love both those bits of advice there, Richard. Hey, before we get into it, Richard, what I'd like to start with is just a quick summary about you. If you were to meet someone in a barbecue, what do you tell them you do? I'm sure you don't give them the roll call like I did just then. How do you summarize what you do to one of your friends, or if you meet someone new?
Well, interesting enough, there's always that danger at the barbecue, and I think we've all had it in the fitness industry, where if you tell people you work in the fitness industry, particularly anything to do with the gym, their first reaction is to tell you why they don't go because they actually feel guilty, or is it okay if I eat that sausage because it isn't saturated fat bad for me? And so I know it's probably not the question you're actually asking, but I'm sometimes a wee bit careful in how I phrase it, because I'm aware that, in fact, and that's an interesting one, is that some people are actually scared of our industry. Those that we know, the people that we associate with, more than likely are active people. And if you've been doing it regularly, you know that you actually enjoy it. But here's the thing, for people that aren't active, they don't get that. And so for them, it's that thing they should do. It's like eating more vegetables or brushing your teeth if you're a 4-year-old kid. I should do it, but I kind of don't. So really, in answer to your question, I often say, look, I work in the exercise industry in New Zealand. I generally just start with that, and that's all I say. And I used to do that when I owned a gym. I do that now when I'm the CEO of the Exercise Association. But I generally just say that's the industry I work in. And they go, what does that mean? I go, well, I actually work for the industry body, so we look after everyone that provides exercise. We're really just trying to encourage more Kiwis to be active. And I kind of leave it at that generally, because if they want to engage with me more about that, happy to tell them the story. If they tell me that they're going to a gym, that's awesome. Carry on going. They tell me that they're looking for a personal trainer, or I can help with that too. But rather than getting a wee bit too preachy, because there's way too many messages out there that do get a bit preachy, and they start telling you you're basically doing a bad job as a human being because you're not eating your fruit and vegetables, you're not exercising enough, you probably drink alcohol occasionally, all of these things are terrible for you, and basically you failed, right? And the thing is, if you go to the gym once a week, or you go to a walk once a week, that is way better than not going for a walk once a week. Is it enough? Maybe not, but let's have a discussion about that one later. The problem, I think, in our industry, there's way too many messages that are, I would say, unachievable on step one. And so I like to keep my barbecue message pretty simple, which is, hey, I work for this industry body that happens to try to get more people active. And, if they then want to engage with me about that, that's cool. And they just want to talk about themselves, that's cool as well.
Love it. I think that's awesome advice, Richard. Not only was it a good answer to the question, but I feel like a lot of my listeners have got a lot out of that as well. They're like, okay, maybe I should answer my barbecue question a bit like that to make it a bit more of a friendly and make me less intimidating, because I get that all the time. I'm a personal trainer. All of a sudden, so I shouldn't be eating this in front of you. So I love how you've broken that.
Normally I've got a glass of wine in my hand if I'm at a barbecue. So it's like, hey, no, I believe in balance. And so, whether it be I'm eating a sausage, it's like, yeah, and I'm going to probably eat a sausage as well, because, barbecues and sausages go really well. And whether or not you want to say I only eat organic sausages, that's a whole different conversation for another day. But personally, I always say, hey, someone's given me some food. Thank you very much. And let's drink some nice wine while we're chatting.
Love it. Well, hey, let's get into it now, Richard. So what I want to speak mainly about today is around the whole personal training, upskilling, educating themselves, going to conventions, how to get the most out of conventions, a bit about FITEX, all that sort of stuff there. I think the best way to start is the purely education side of things. So I'm pretty confident that you and me both agree that if you want to be a successful trainer or want to be successful in the fitness industry, you've got to keep upskilling. If you could give us just your comments on that. What's your opinion there?
Look, I think it's absolutely essential, and I think it's really interesting. I look at other professions, and I think what makes a great doctor, what makes a great lawyer. If we take away the soft stuff, they are really important. How they relate to me as a human being is very important. But in terms of their core skills, I think of my doctor. Now he's roughly my age, so he's sort of late 40s, maybe 50, and he probably did med school 20, 25 years ago. Now, what he learned at med school, while relevant, is way less relevant than what he's learned in the last 25 years. So I'm very interested and I want to know that person is up to date as opposed to qualified from 25 years ago. Because some of the things that we've learned, even that I know from medical world, say from online, in the last 25 years, lots has changed. And the same in the exercise industry. I think, 10 years ago, the idea of high-intensity interval training, I'm not saying it didn't exist, but certainly it wasn't mainstream. The idea that maybe yoga was good for everybody was a radical idea. And so these are very simple things, but they were far from known 5-10 years ago. And if you've been in the industry 20 years, you'll know there's so much to change. Personal trainers used to be for movie stars and athletes. I mean, why on earth would you need someone to pay you to tell you to do exercise? And so I think it's really important to understand, the value of ongoing education is in fact higher than the value of initial education. Of course, both matter. And if you're early on in your career, the two might blur into each other. But actually, the longer you go on, the less it matters what you learned 10 years ago in, I'll say, school or university or polytech or But in New Zealand, it's wherever you got that knowledge, but actually it's all about what you've done since.
Yeah, I love that for so many different reasons. And I've never heard someone put it like that. I like the way how you've put it. Your continuing education, the more you get on, is more valuable than your initial education. So I love that there. Now, we're going to speak about conventions and conferences, but just before we go into that, what are the other ways that personal trainers listening to this can get some good education out there, Richard? Have you got any tips for them?
Yeah, absolutely. Like, I think the cool thing is do your homework. Just search and look out there. And obviously there's lots online. Online is always a double-edged sword. So you make sure that those are providing it. And I don't just sometimes watching YouTube channels can be really educational. But be careful, just because someone's got a YouTube channel doesn't make them an expert. I'm also, one of the things I always say, if someone's trying to sell you something, just be aware that everything that they might say prior to the selling bit may or may not be correct. And again, that's where that sort of appropriately, and clinically and analysing and being, if need be, confronting and saying, is this actually right? Particularly if they're trying to sell you a product. But look out there, look at what's available. Particularly on the lookout if you're in a smaller city, or maybe not a major, you're in a smaller city or even a small town. What's available in your city? Because they do come to your city, but maybe not every week. You're very fortunate if you're in Sydney or in Auckland, New Zealand. If I look on the reps website, I see probably 20 or 30 things in Auckland every year. If you're in Dunedin, there might be 3 or 4. But when they come to your town, if it's something you're interested in, really go and do it, because that opportunity to be around other people, and this is, I suppose, coming back to one of the benefits of it. Yes, you will get education, and education is really valuable, but being around other like-minded people, or potentially being around other people that are not like you. I actually recently did, just out of interest, I did an animal flow workshop. So I did
love it, yeah.
Yeah, I did it just with a person. Someone said, "Oh, do you want to do an animal flow?" I was like, "Sure, heard of it. What actually is it?" In fact, I'd been at FITEX conference for a couple of years, and Mike's come over and done the sessions. They were awesome, really popular. I didn't have a lot of time to actually see it, but I thought, yeah, it kind of sounds pretty cool. It's a bit like yoga, isn't it? And that's literally all I knew. And then so I did it. It's like, wow, I totally had it wrong. Yes, some of the poses look like it, but it's not at all. And then I thought, oh wow, there's actually Andrew Chatty was coming to Christchurch to do to be the master trainer, and I thought, like, great opportunity. What was really interesting in that workshop was there were PTs, there were yoga teachers, there was a dance teacher, there was someone actually whose son had done it, and she was really interested in it, and there was one person who was actually a non-exerciser who loved the idea of animal flow, who wanted to do it for her own practice. And you go, this is awesome. And so obviously there was some commonality, but there was also some, hey, you come from a different world. You come from the yoga world. You come from the dance teaching world. What can we learn off you and off each other? And that was so valuable. So, and that's just taking one simple example. I went to one workshop for one weekend on a particular modality. But, conferences are just that. I was going to say on steroids. It's probably a bad. Someone will misquote me. So yeah, look, anything that can get more people to be hanging around other awesome people is a good thing.
Love it. Well, that probably transitions well onto conventions and conferences. Just before we do, I want to expand on what Richard said a little bit there. If you are in a small town, because we've got a lot of, obviously, listeners, rural Australia and regional Australia, if something comes anywhere around your area, it's worth just clearing your calendar and going, because there's 2 ways you can look at it. Oh, I'd love to go, but I've got something on. I would go the other way, see when it's coming, prioritize, and can everything else and go to that thing there. So I love that there. Let's move on to conferences and conventions, Richard. So if we know the benefits of education now, what are the advantages of getting them from a convention or a conference?
Well, I can share my first time when I went to a conference, and I really, to be honest, I didn't really know what it was. I knew that there were some sessions on. I'd owned a gym for just on a year, and I heard of this thing called a conference in New Zealand. And I thought, wouldn't be a bad idea, I suppose, to learn some stuff. And so I went along not really knowing. And one of the things I realized was absolutely the sessions are gold. Learning from people who know stuff that you don't. And secondly, of course, is that being around other people that share either common challenges or just share a common objective with you. One of the most amazing experiences I had was to talk to another fellow gym owner, and until then I hadn't spoken to a lot of others, and realizing that we'd all had the same challenge. We'd all, we actually laughed about the fact that we'd employed people who turned out to be the worst human beings on the planet, because we all got say how good we are at employing people. And boy, oh boy, I've employed some amazing people over the years. And, you know, that's, I'd like to think, due to my good judgment, and it's probably more due to the fact that they were amazing before I met them. But also, I've made some mistakes. And you realize that, other people have done that too. Now, it doesn't make the problem go away, but you realize, phew, I'm a human being, I make mistakes, and what can I learn? What do we mutually learn? And we would share stories about who employed the worst human being.
Did you win that one? Did you win that one? Did you? Or?
Well, we did have a staff member who once left a note that says she was threatening to leave her uniform on the reception counter and walk out naked. That was her resignation letter. Luckily, she walked out with the uniform, which we refer to. I'm not going to mention her name because, but it was like, okay, rightio, so you're not happy then. But, you know, that's just, again, it's an interesting story, but to be able to go, I thought I was the only person that did that. I thought I was the only person that had that challenge. And it could be that, or it could be a more serious thing, like, hey, I'm not understanding social media. I don't know Facebook. We keep on boosting our posts and no one's reading them and spending a whole bunch of money and I just don't understand how it works. Oh, me too. Oh, great. Well, we're going to go to the Facebook session this afternoon and learn from it. But then afterwards, we might keep in contact. And particularly when you realize that most of the people in the room, you can view them two ways. They are your competitor, or actually they're your allies, because they are people trying to do the same thing you do, which is get more people active. And whether that being they're another gym or another trainer, or just another modality, you know, the yoga teacher and the dance teacher and the PT are actually doing the same role with different tools. And I think it really depends. It's totally your decision how you view those other people. Even if they're down the road from you, I actually think you have more to benefit from working with them than you have from working, they're the gym down the road because they compete for the same members. You go, really, 80% of the population don't go to a gym. Over 50% of our population in Australia and New Zealand are obese. We know that we can help those people. And again, I'm preaching the converted when I talk to your audience. But, there's our opportunity rather than saying that other trainer or that other gym or that other yoga teacher is my competition because they do what I do.
Yeah.
Do they really do what you do? Because I'd like to think you do something a bit different. So back yourself. No, they don't do what I do. They do different to what I do, and that's okay. But I do what I do, and I do that really well.
Love it. I agree. Multiple different points there. Let's just expand on a couple of them. I like the whole allies versus competition. And I look at it another way as well. I'm like, well, hey, the competition's going to be there anyway. Whether I interact with them or not, they're going to be there. So why not get on with them and share tips and ideas and make both of us better? So I like that side of it there. Also, the hanging around with other people. I find the more and more with myself now that I learn just as much just from hanging out with other people than I do at the actual learning things. And there's this old saying, your network is your net worth and you're the average of the 5 people you hang around with most. There's all these research out there that shows, hey, if you hang around with these other people that are successful, that's going to help you as well. So just by being around that, I think is good. And I also like the whole motivation and inspiring side of it. Whenever I leave a fitness convention, I am just so motivated and inspired. I just can't wait to get back to the gym on Monday or get back to the boot camp on Monday and do it. And don't get me wrong, look, an online course, you still get a little bit motivated. And yeah, look, you go and do a weekend course, you'll get a little bit motivated. But it just doesn't compare with having hundreds or even thousands if you're in some of the biggest conventions of people there. There's just an atmosphere and an energy, and you just leave there so inspired, which I think is also just important as the education, because you can find the education a lot of different places. It's if you actually implement it that you get the results, and I find the conventions help you implement it. And you'd agree with that, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think going in with a plan that, almost I would say have one piece of paper that says, what are you actually going to do? Because you're going to come away with probably about 4 million ideas. Have 3 big ones, maybe half a dozen smaller things that you can do literally tomorrow. But have that plan from the beginning. What am I going to pick from this? I also, just to reiterate one of the things you just said about the energy you come away with from a conference. One of the things that often people ask me at the end of the conference, how did it go? And I go, well, I'm both exhausted and energized. It's like, boy, I'm, we've just put on this amazing event. There's been 800 people. We put an awards ceremony on the Saturday night. It's like, it's work. It's so amazing. And at the same time, it's like, boy, I've just run out of adrenaline. But it's so cool. And one of the things I would say, if you happen to be around a team, so if you're at a studio with other people, I remember one club owner used to go themselves to conferences, and they wouldn't bring staff. And often their staff would literally, and they'd say this to me, they would roll their eyes and go, oh God, he's been to a conference again. Because if you've ever had someone who's experienced something that you haven't, and they want to tell you, and of course they're going, it's amazing, you wouldn't believe it. And you're going, oh God, what? You go, no, I went to this conference, it was fantastic. You got to go there. I've got this great idea, we're going to change our marketing, we're going to change our product. And he's going, what are you on? Because you didn't experience it. You're going, you just sound like a crazy guy who wants to change your whole business model because some guy on a stage spoke to you. But if you were there with me, you would understand. And maybe you weren't at the same session as me, but you were at the same event. And we find that some of the small studios do this really well. They'll have like 5 staff, and either one stays behind, or if they can, they're a studio maybe even doing the, if the club's open but there's no staff, whatever the dynamic of that particular studio is. But most of them are at the event. And that's the power. So that, maybe the manager and the owner is going to the sessions on business, and the PTs are going to their ones, and they're jointly going to a couple on, how to build a team or whatever it might be. That's the power of conventions, where, in fact, coming back to your point about accommodation, one of the things we do a little bit different with FITEX is from the very beginning, we looked at what are the barriers to why people can't attend. And part of it can be cost, but it's not just the cost of the conference. FITEX can be as low as just under $600 if you're registered with reps and you get the early bird rate. But actually, it's the cost of flying there, it's the cost of accommodation. So we try to, as much as possible, keep that down. So, we'll share information about how to bus from the airport for $7 so that you don't have to spend $65 on an Uber. But at the same time, we'll also say there's on-site accommodation for $45 a night. We buy the whole student village because we host it at a university. And that's such an awesome experience for the people, because now you're in basically an apartment setup where you've got your own bedroom that you can lock a door, but you're actually in an apartment with other people, five bedrooms in an apartment like you would in a student village. And that's a really interesting and a fascinating dynamic. But again, it keeps costs down, because $45 a night is very affordable accommodation. And boy, oh boy, you have a great social time as well.
That's what got me over the line the first time. I was like, okay, that's the cost of the convention. Okay, hold on, it's only $45 a night. Sign me up. And it's just, and especially coming from Australia, because I didn't really know anyone over there. And that's the other advantage to staying in that accommodation. If you don't know anyone, you could go and stay at an Airbnb not too far, and that would probably be pretty reasonable as well at Auckland. But you just won't meet as many people. So that's cool. I also like your point about the one pager. And I actually learned that from FITEX last year. Justin Tamsett, JT, I believe he gave the opening at the business one, I think just after you.
Yeah.
And he said, hey, before you do anything else, rip out one piece now. It's your to-do, and these are things you're going to do at the end of this convention. And I've brought that to every convention, and I love it. Now, where I'd like to go from here, Richard, let's talk about FITEX specifically. We've both been to a lot of conventions around the world. FITEX is definitely one of my favorites. I'm sure it's one of your favorites as well. Let's share with the listeners, what are the best things about FITEX? Let's get the people that are coming, let's get them more excited. The people that are sitting over the fence, what can we tell them to push them over the fence?
Sure. Well, one of the things we look at with when we've been designing the schedule for FITEX is to realize that it doesn't have to be one size fits all. Just like with exercise, there's no one size fits all. I mean, the more that we learn, the magic way to do exercise is this. It's like, well, that's actually not right. There are lots of different ways, and you've got to do the way that most suits you, and that's a different conversation, but it's the same principle. And so when we're looking at FITEX schedule, we don't just put on the stuff that, that's going to be the people that 100 people want to come to see. Actually, we'll put on a lot of those. So there'll be lots of sessions on what we call topical stuff of the day, really good stuff on whether it be, Eno Dwyer doing a stuff on fascia, whether it be someone doing a great business topic about, how to do marketing on a $5 a week budget kind of ideas. Like, yep, lots of trainers are interested in that stuff. But actually saying, what about the specialty stuff? What about the stuff where only 6 people are interested in that? You go, the conference is the best time to do that, because we won't be able to do that on a workshop, because it just doesn't make sense financially or just logistically. We can't do that on a roadshow where we take it around 10 different cities, because not only will you lose money at the first city, you'll lose money at the other 9 as well. And then the presenter says, well, this doesn't work for me either. But actually at a conference, you absolutely can, and you should take those things, and I'll call them, whether they're niche markets or whether they're just, different PTs or different club owners at different points in their career need different bits of information. And to say, let's have those too. So we love we've even had pre-convention workshops where 8 people have turned up. I say to the presenter, how was it? You're thinking they're going to say, wait, it's not much. They go, it's the best one I've ever delivered. Because the engagement. You know, the 8 people first of all wanted to be there, and secondly, the amount of I suppose the intensity of the interaction they got was just phenomenal, as opposed to the normal one where you might have 50. And again, part of that's New Zealand's a small market, but part of it also can be, let's pick the things that maybe are a little bit niche, are a little bit more for certain people at certain points in their career, and have those. And I always say to people, when you're picking your sessions, you need to do 2 things. Of course, pick what you like, and that's probably what you want. And most exercise professionals, it's going to be around the exercise stuff. It might be around nutrition and other stuff as well, in terms of their sort of, like, you're rounding it off a bit and being a bit more holistic. Could be anything from gut health to neurotransmitters in the brain. But if that's your world, great, go for it. And then pick what you need. And quite often for a new trainer, they want exercise knowledge and they need business knowledge. And I'm making it just one or the other. It's not two-dimensional. There's 50 different dimensions to the industry, as we know. But if you're going to say, you know, one thing, and to know that I want to have both. I want to just go to business because that's the stuff I need to do, but don't necessarily want to do right now, but have a balance. And so pick both of the columns and make sure then when you come away, you'll go, this is the stuff that I know will help my business to succeed in the future. And this stuff I just love. I just breathe this every day. This is awesome. I've got some more tools in my toolkit for my clients.
Love it, love it. I'm excited already. And just to round off a few of those, or even just for my audience listening, anyone from New Zealand, there's no excuse, right? If you're in New Zealand, I just recommend go there. If you're from Australia, same thing, especially from the East Coast. It literally takes me 3 hours. It's a few $100. Like, compared to what you pay compared to what you get is just amazing. And it's an investment. All right, whatever you spend going over to FITEX, I guarantee you're going to make that back Forget about what you learn and having fun and meeting people. All that's great. But I'm sure you'll even make that back financially, just if you implement what you learn over there. So, Richard, am I right in saying there's currently an early bird special? If we can
Correct, yes.
My listeners register before, when does this early special end? Is it?
So that finishes on 1st of October. And it's $200 off the normal price. So it's well worth getting in if you are thinking about doing it. And again, you've got to plan this because you think, well, it's, you know, the last weekend of November, you've got to think, well, that's got to be blocked off in my diary. If you're doing it now and you're thinking about it, book it now because it will happen. If you wait, not only will you miss the early bird, but what it means is in November, you'll be busy. I mean, let's face it, we all are. And if you ask me to do something next week, the chances I can say, well, I can't quite squeeze it in next week. And I certainly can't take the whole weekend off. But if you ask me now in advance, well, actually, I can block it off now because I haven't got anything in there. So, you know, early bird 1 October, but the reason we do it that early is to actually not just encourage people to book, but actually encourage people to diarise it and actually block out their own time because that's that commitment from them.
Love it. And I think also I want to add to that as well. If you're thinking of doing it, don't think about doing it. Just do it. Because this happened to me and it changed my life. A few years ago now, I listened to a speaker. I don't know. Have you heard of the bucket list guy? Travis Bell?
Oh, yeah, absolutely, yes.
Yeah. So I heard him talk live a few years ago, and he basically, said he's a bucket list guy. He encourages people to do things, and he said, look, if there's one thing you're thinking of doing and you know it's going to be a benefit, go and do it. Don't think about it. Go and actually book something. And for me, that was going to the IDEA convention in the USA. And I was thinking about it for like a year. Oh, should I go? Oh, it's in the USA. Oh, can I take it off work? I was coming up with every single excuse in the book. But I listened to Travis. He was really motivating. I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to book it. I went and I booked the convention. And then from there, it was a flow-on effect. And I ended up going. And it literally changed my life. And I had the best experience. And now I'm like the biggest fan of conventions ever. So if you're thinking about going to FITEX, don't think about it. Just go on now and book that ticket. You'll get it cheaper. It's locked in. Everything will be cheaper. The flights will be cheaper. The accommodation won't be sold out. So just book it. But hey, Richard, that's all we've got time for today. Is there anything I missed out? Is there anything I should have asked you, but I didn't, or anything you want to leave us with?
Look, I think that's a really good summary, and I really love what you're saying about, just do it. And, if it's not go to FITEX, go to another conference. Go and experience and do and hang around other people that do what you do. And as you say, you'll come back with an amazing, bunch of cool tools to help your business. But that energy to just remind yourself, what we do in this industry, and I say we in a collective sense, is we improve the lives, I'll say, of Kiwis in New Zealand. One-on-one, whether you're a PT or maybe in a small group or even in a large group with group exercise, but we actually improve their lives. And how many people can say that about their job? That is awesome, and we should celebrate that. So how about you hang around some other awesome people that do that, and at the same time come away with a whole bunch of great ideas.
Love it. Love it. All right, Richard, thank you very much for your time.
Thanks, Jono. Pleasure.